everyone. So I wanted to discuss a thing that happens every year. It's called Banned Books Week, where you talk about books that are banned, challenged, things like that. Now, I have a problem with the term banned because when something is typically banned, it means it's removed. It's completely removed. Now, let me go and look at the definition I have. Now, it says book banning, the practice of prohibiting or restricting the reading of certain books by the general public or by members of a local community or religious group. Books can be banned by means of their removal from publicly accessible locations like libraries, by their destruction, including the burning or printed books. This is the thing I would say is a typical way that you would say something is banned, is like you want to destroy it. You want to make it to where it's not available to anybody. That's banning. Or it says, or by making their authorship or distribution a punishable act, like putting somebody behind bars or trying to end that person's life for writing that book. So books are typically banned by governments, but they can also be effectively banned by religious authorities, businesses, and in rare cases, powerful private individuals. To ban a book is almost always a controversial act in a liberal democracy, since its citizens consider media freedom to be both a common good and a necessary component of any democratic society. So, I will say, for me, I do not like books that are banned. But what I will accept is if a book is, say, censored from specific age groups or restricted from certain age groups. So when a book is challenged, like say in a school setting, I'm okay with that because there might be something in the book that may not be appropriate for school-aged children. So I agree with, yes, this book should not be in a school library. But do I think it needs to be banned from all libraries? No. That's where the line stops for me. And I say, okay, this book may be inappropriate for school-age children, or say even teenagers. But adults have every right to read that book. So it should be available at your local library, and maybe it's under a certain threshold of where it's supposed to be. Like, say, if it has to do with like sexual themes, things like that, put it in the adult section. You wouldn't put it in the child section at your local library. It would be in the adult section, or maybe it would be in a LGBTQ section if, say, like there's LGBTQ themes, things like that. It would be in that section. So you have to specifically put a book in the section where it's supposed to be, like you wouldn't want to put anything that's YA in the romance section because it's a YA book. It has nothing to do with, it may have like a romance in the book, like that may be one of the plot points in the book, but it's not a romance, it's not under the romance genre. Normally romance genre is under adult, and it'd be in like the fiction section, You would maybe have the YA section off than the fiction section because YA is typically for preteens, teens. So it would be easier for preteens and teens to find those books in that specific section, It's like when you go into your local Barnes & Noble or your local bookstore. They usually have books sectioned off in certain areas. So usually my local Barnes & Noble will have the romance section, and you'll see like women's fiction in that section too. I really wish there was a separation between women's fiction and romance because it's not the same thing. And then you have the mystery section, then you have the thriller section, you have a horror section, you have a manga section, and you have a child section, and then you have YA. So I mean, there are different sections for it. But when you're in a school setting, there are certain books I don't see them as being acceptable reading material for children and teenagers. There's lines, like you shouldn't cross those lines because of certain themes, So it says Banned Books Week. It's October 5th through the 11th. And they usually do this every year. I hate the term when they use banned, because majority of these books that are quote unquote banned are not banned. You could still purchase them. Banning is you cannot purchase this book at all. It's not available for public buying, nothing. You can't find it at your local bookstore. It's nowhere. You can't find it. That's banned. These books are being restricted. There's a difference, And so I have a problem when people, they pretty much like post this stuff every year, and it gets people arguing back and forth with each other. And it's like, stop it with using this title. Why don't you just say these books are censored? Why are they censored? Or why are they restricted? They're restricted because of this. So I wanted to go over these books and their themes so I could tell you why these books are restricted or censored out of schools. So the number one, A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. So it says 23 bans. It says Anthony Burgess' influential dystopian satire depicts a world where teen protagonist Alex creates mayhem before undergoing aversion therapy to curb his violent tendencies. So this one here, I actually looked up all of the trigger warnings. The trigger warnings for A Clockwork Orange are sexual assault, torture, and violence. Do you want that type of book in a school setting? I personally don't. Especially when it comes to sexual assault. They're teenagers. It's a teenage gang. If anybody's ever watched A Clockwork Orange, like the movie has these characters called, was it Drogues or whatever it is? It's basically a teen gang. They go around, they're violent, they rob from people, and they sexually assault women. I don't think that's appropriate for school-age children, so I can understand why it was restricted out of schools. It should be available at your local library. And it should be available to buy, which it is. The next one, Breathless by Jennifer Niven. This says 20 bans. In this coming-of-age love story, Claudia Henry is coping with her parents' divorce and getting ready for college when she meets a local trail guide with a mysterious past. Based on that synopsis alone, should not be available for school-age children because it sounds like a romance, right? So I looked up the content warnings, the trigger warnings. There's alcohol consumption in here, suicide is discussed, and there's drowning. So I don't think that's appropriate for school-age children. Again, that's me. I don't think it's appropriate for school-age children. The next book, Sold, by Patricia McCormick. It says 20 bans. McCormick tells the story of Lakshmi, a 13-year-old girl in Nepal who is sold into prostitution. Does that sound appropriate for school-age children? It says the powerful, poignant, best-selling National Book Award finalist gives voice to a young girl robbed of her childhood, yet determined to find the strength to triumph. Okay, the trigger warnings in that are child sex and human trafficking. Is that appropriate for school-age children? No. This is why it was taken out of the schools. I don't know why it was put in schools in the first place. The next one is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, 19 bans. This National Book Award winning novel is set in 1954 at the height of the Red Scare, when 17-year-old Lily Hu visits a lesbian bar called the Telegraph Club. Based on that, do you think that should be available for school-age children? So the content warnings in here are homophobia, racism, misogyny, miscarriage, physical and emotional abuse, and underage drinking. No, this should not be available for school-age children to read. It sounds like an adult novel that's for adults. A Court of Mist and Fury. By Sarah J. Maas, says, who skyrocketed to fame with the help of BookTok, was the third most frequently banned author of the 2024-2025 school year, according to PEN, America's Index of School Book Bans. This follow-up to A Court of Thorns and Roses offers romance, fantasy, magic, and political intrigue. Okay. So the content warnings to those are forced prostitution, arranged marriage, torture, murder, physical assault, sexual assault, physical and emotional abuse, and child abuse. So should that be available for school-age children? The next one is called Crank by Ellen Hopkins. Christina Snow is the perfect daughter, gifted high school junior, quiet, never any trouble. Then Christina meets the monster, Crank, and what begins as a wild, ecstatic ride turns into a struggle through hell for her mind, her soul, her life. All right. The content warnings in there are drug addiction, sexual assault, violence, and teen pregnancy. I don't think that should be available for school-age children. Forever by Judy Blume. This one here, it says it's a 1975, before I was born, young adult novel, has been a target of censorship for 50 years. Bloom has said she wrote it because her daughter wanted to read something where kids could have sex without either of them having to die. Okay, Judy Bloom. Okay. So, the content warnings in this are sex, romance, and nudity. The character of Catherine has sex with Michael. Catherine visits Planned Parenthood to get birth control pills and also has discussions about sex with her mother, grandmother, and best friend. Another character who has had many sexual partners gets pregnant and has a baby. I wouldn't consider that young adult. I would say there's a possibility that you may think about getting that for your teenage child. You know, possible to kind of like show them that, you know, maybe you shouldn't have sex as a teenager because you could become pregnant as a teenager and be a teenage mom. You know, there's that possibility, you know. I don't think I have issues when it comes to Planned Parenthood buying, like, getting birth control, you know, that type of thing. I think, you know, teens should know about sex and birth control and prevention and all that other stuff. So I think that, I don't know, it's 1975 that it came out, so it may not be up to date with a lot of stuff, you know, because time has like gone by when it comes to, I mean, you're talking, it's older than me, you know. I was born in 79, it's 1975 that it came out, you know. So I don't think it's probably relevant anymore, honestly. You know, especially when it talks about teen pregnancies and all this other stuff, I don't think it's relevant for today. I think you probably would, if you wanted to get something like that and put it in like a school library for teenagers as like a educational thing, you'd be better off with like a better book when it comes to education, like an anatomy book, things like that, you know. I think that would be more appropriate for a school setting, especially teenagers, high school students, than that book. That's personally, that's what I, you know, that's how I feel. So the next one is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. I don't know. In this coming-of-age novel, Wallflower, Charlie deals with the complexities of high school, from his young love to the pain of losing loved ones. So, the content warnings in this one are sexual abuse, PTSD, sexual assault, drug and alcohol use, profanity, and there are LGBTQIA themes in it. I would say the sexual assault and the sexual abuse, and then when it comes to alcohol and drug use, maybe you wouldn't want teens to read this, because it may promote to some people, like it's okay to do that. I would say, I think it all depends on the maturity of your teenager. If you were to say they could read that, I would say it depends on the maturity of the teenage child you have. If they're immature, probably not best to read that book. But if they're really mature for their age and they understand like the difference between fiction and reality and different things like that, it might be okay, But for a school setting, no. I would say this would be better not in a school, You can certainly buy it for your teenager, though. The next one is Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West by Gregory Maguire. This is the best-selling reimagined prequel to The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, launched one of the highest-grossing Broadway musicals of all time, and a 2-part movie sensation. So I looked up the content warnings of that one. That one is a lot. When it comes to the book compared to the movie. So it says, contains several dark and mature themes that are significantly different from its musical and movie adaptations. Because of this, it includes major trigger warnings, including scenes of animal cruelty, explicit sexual content, violence, and abuse. Sexual assault is in this book, including one with a non-sentient animal and a sexual encounter that occurs while the victim is asleep. Oh, there's also infidelity, and there's also drug use and addiction in here, as well as bullying, discrimination, bigotry, and slavery. So the additional warnings of this, the novel explores complex political and philosophical topics, including propaganda, tyranny, and religion. The overall tone of the book is much darker and more cynical than the musical, and it has a tragic ending. So honestly, I don't think it's appropriate for school-age children. It should be something that you would read as an adult, because the movies are going to be significantly different than the book. This is why I would say, like, if you want your child to watch the movie, I would say the movie would be probably more appropriate for your child to watch than having them read the book, So the next one is All Boys Aren't Blue. This one, I understand why it was taken out of schools, by George M. Johnson. So it says, in a series of personal essays, prominent journalist and LGBTQIA plus activist George M. Johnson's All Boys Aren't Blue explores their childhood, adolescence, and college years in New Jersey and Virginia. So, the content warnings to this one are very extensive. So it says the book is based on the author's real life experiences. So it's basically like an autobiographical novel. So there's sexual violence and abuse that is on-page descriptions of incestuous child molestation and sexual assault. There's also sexual content. The book discusses sexual relationships, consent, and sexual awakenings. Homophobia and transphobia. The book recounts instances of verbal and physical violence, hate crimes, bullying, in the use of slurs. It's based on the author's LGBTQ plus identity. So racism and anti-blackness are significant themes throughout the essays, including instances involving racial physical violence, and includes bullying, assault, and injuries. There's death and illness in here. The book includes the death of a family member, of loss and discussions of cancer, dead naming, The book contains instances of dead naming a transgender family member, a practice that can be painful for some readers. Toxic masculinity. The author shares experiences dealing with gender identity, brotherhood, and toxic masculinity. So, do I think this is appropriate for school-age children? No, I do not. I think if you're a part of the LGBT community, then it's up to you as an adult if you want to read this book, because when you are a part of a smaller community, usually a minority community, you can have a lot of bigotry, a lot of racial things, a lot of sexism, a lot of homophobia, things like that, especially if you are gay, lesbian, bisexual, if you are transgender, anything like that, you can have discrimination targeted towards you for your identity. So I would say this is probably more appropriate for maybe young adults, 18 to older, if they want to read it. They're an adult by then. Teenagers, I wouldn't say this is appropriate for teenagers. Like I said, once you're 18, you're an adult. You have a right to read whatever you want to read. So yeah, I personally wouldn't say that this should be in schools, a school setting. Next one is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, introduces 19-year-old huntress Fair as she is dragged to a magical land of fairies and finds herself developing feelings for her captor. Yeah, captor, captive, that's one right there that I'm like, So this one has sexual assault in it, torture, murder, kidnapping, animal death, and poverty themes. Yeah, I wouldn't say this is appropriate for children or teenagers. It's definitely more an adult fantasy. And like I said, there's more of a romance to it too. So I think that should be not available for underage children. It's definitely an adult themed book, The next one, Damsel. This one, wow. Damsel by Elena K. Arnold. Says, in this dark fairy tale, a damsel who is rescued from a fierce dragon by a handsome prince discovers that all is not what it seems. That's one way to put it, I guess. So Damsel, it is a dark feminist reimagining of a fairy tale that contains extensive and graphic content related to sexual and physical violence, animal abuse, and misogyny. Many reviewers recommend it only for older readers and note that it is often mistakenly marketed towards younger audiences. There is sexual assault, non-consensual sexual content, sexual violence, animal-like acts. Some sexual abuse is described in a way that approaches bestiality. The book includes crude and frequent euphemisms for male genitalia, which some readers found cringeworthy. Animal cruelty and death, cannibalism, a man's still-beating heart is ripped out and eaten. The novel includes acts of dismemberment, eye gouging, and stabbings, misogyny and sexism, domestic and emotional abuse, suicide, and self-harm, gaslighting, trapped, and confinement. Yeah, definitely not appropriate for school-age children. Definitely not. So, The Duff, Designated Ugly Fat Friend by Cody Keplinger. The movie is obviously different than the book. I would say the movie would be probably perfectly fine for if you wanted to have like your preteen or teen watch it. It's fine. It's fine. I thought it was a cute movie. But the book, on the other hand, definitely different. So Bianca discovers that a boy has given her a devastating name, the Duff, or Designated Ugly Fat Friend, and finds herself in an enemies with benefits relationship. So, the content warning is slut shaming, physical child abuse, parent in recovery for alcoholism. Yeah, I don't think that's a great theme for children. Maybe older teens, or like I said, 18, 19, probably should be fine, for that, but not kids. Not a kid's book. This one here, yeah, this one would, honestly, I would not even think of putting this in a school, because this is a very triggering book. 19 Minutes by Jodi Picoult. It's a best-selling author of My Sister's Keeper and Small Great Things. Those books tend to be very sad. I don't know why you would have those in a school setting. Writes about the moments leading up to and the devastating aftermath of a school shooting. Do you honestly think a school shooting book should be in a school setting? Not unless it's a survival book where it teaches you how to like hide from, anything like that. That's no. The themes of the book is based on a school shooting with bullying, suicide, and sexual assault. The plot revolves around a fictional school shooting and its aftermath, making it a very difficult read for many people. Yeah, I don't think that's should be available for school age children. Okay, the last one I'll talk about is Storm and Fury by Jennifer L. Armentrout. It says, in best-selling author Jennifer L. Armentrout's Storm and Fury, 18-year-old Trinity Marrow is protected by shape-shifting wardens from evil demons. When a supernatural war is unleashed, she has to trust an outsider with secrets of his own. So, the content warnings for that are attempted sexual assault, death of a parent, knife and sword violence. I would say this is definitely more of a adult fantasy book, so it shouldn't be available for school age children. Like there should be a rating for it, like 18 and over, should be able to read it, So yeah, this is the problem I have with when people go and they come up with like, oh, these books are banned. Maybe there's a reason of why these books end up being restricted or censored away from schools. Maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe you should look up why they were challenged in the first place. I don't understand why most or all of these books I don't understand why they were available for school age children. That means these these librarians that are school librarians are not doing their jobs properly. Like if I was a school librarian, I would definitely look at like, would I want my own children reading this book? Probably not. I want to go and find stuff that is appropriate for them to read, that they can enjoy, that doesn't have a lot of triggering content to it. Like you want to delve into certain books at specific time frames of like your age. Like I would tell people, as a romance reader, I don't think it's safe for people to jump into a dark romance right when you start reading romance. Like if you're a romance reader, you just started reading romance, I would not suggest dark romance. I would say definitely be cautious delving into dark romance because it can have a lot of triggering themes to it. And it can be very, they can be very dark. And like I said, triggering. Not everybody can handle reading dark romance. This is why I would say, like, if you just start reading romance for the first time, you definitely want to start off with certain authors first, just to kind of like dip your toes in, because some authors are very descriptive when it comes to sex acts. Some are very descriptive. And you may not be prepared for that. You may not be ready for that. So I would say, like, there might be certain authors that you would want to dip your toes into, like maybe Ali Hazelwood or Emily Henry, even though I don't consider Emily Henry to be a romance author. She's definitely more women's fiction, but she does have a lot of romances as like a plot point in her books. I would say maybe you want to step into maybe like them, like Emily Henry, Ali Hazelwood, Christina Lauren is another author I would say that you could step in, that they have mostly romance themes in the book. Maybe delve into those ones before delving into more descriptive, books. And then also like be aware of like certain authors, like Rena Kent is a dark romance author. I would say I would not step into her until you've been reading romance for a while before you step into like Rena Kent or I'm trying to think of other authors out there. Mafia can be very triggering too. Like, is it Cora Riley's an author? I would say definitely, be leery when you step in, to that author, because there could be a lot of triggering themes in there. So you definitely should look up this stuff before you suggest it to like your children or your young adult children, that type of thing, like if they're 18 or 19 and they're like, oh, I want to get into these types of books, definitely look it up and say, okay, well, be prepared and know that these are the themes that are going to be in these types of books. So that way you can kind of prepare yourself. I think it's good to do your own research when it comes to things, but also this is why I say, like, I don't have a problem if, say, they decided to put a rating system on books and had it like on the back, there's a rating system. Like when it comes to manga books, there's usually a rating system on the back. Let me see if, yeah, right here. My eldest, I have to get the first book in this series, but she's got this series here, and it says right here, it's for teens. It says T for teen. And those ones there, I'm okay with her picking up because she's going to be 13 this year. So she's going to be a teenager. And yeah, I think it all depends on the maturity of your child. If you think it's okay for them to delve into certain books. Let me see what this one here. Okay, this one here is definitely more of a child's book. This was in the child section. So you could tell, like, this is definitely more of a child's book. And so I told her, okay, yeah, you can pick it up and see if it's any good. It has to do with fairies. So we'll see. And like I said, if she has an issue where she's like, there's something in here I don't like, she will usually come to me and she'll say like, there was something in here I didn't like. And so I'll be like, okay, so then I can go and like put it down on Goodreads saying, hey, there's like themes of this in the book, that type of thing. So that way it kind of gives parents a warning, like say if you didn't catch it, but she's mainly not, my eldest is not a huge chapter book reader because she has that thing with her brain where she can't picture the story in her head when she reads. She can't picture it in her head. And there's plenty of people who do have that. You have different types of, your brain, how your brain works. How her brain works is she can't picture it in her head. She's more visual, where there's certain people who are more auditory and that's how they learn. So for me, all of these books, it's through your parental discretion. If you think this is appropriate for your child to read, it's your business as the parent. As it comes to schools, it should not be available in schools. Certain books should not be available for school-age children. I don't think they're appropriate. And the schools should be doing better. They should be doing better when it comes to what should be appropriate for a school-age child and what isn't appropriate, So I just wanted to make that video right here. like I said, there's different ones. I have different ones for my youngest over here that are definitely like, school age books that are perfectly appropriate. Like here's one here, Pizza and Taco. Very simple book. It's a very simple child's book. Definitely more, elementary type of book because it's simple writing. So we got like right here, pizza, 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 so like it's very simple writing in this book. It's kind of like almost like a comic, and so it's supposed to be meant to be like a funny book. So this one here, you could say, yeah, this should be appropriate for elementary children, if they want to pick up the book and read it. Perfectly fine. And, as the parent, as I stated, you have to make that distinction if you think your child is mature enough for those types of themes. I think when it comes to sexuality, sexual situations, sex talk, or even like LGBTQ themes, those should be majority discussed with teenagers, older children that are almost adults. You could have those discussions with your teenagers because during that time, preteens, teenagers are going through their own awakening when it comes to, are they straight? Are they gay? Are they bisexual? I just recently had a conversation with a mother that her daughter was having thoughts of another girl, and like, I like this girl. And I just told her, I said, well, she could be coming to terms with maybe one day she will figure out she's a lesbian, or maybe she's just going through a phase, because some children go through phases too, so she has to really discover it for herself, and all you can do as the parent is just be there for your child to discuss things with them and tell them like it's perfectly natural to have those feelings, it's perfectly natural to be confused, all teenagers, preteens and teenagers are all confused at that time. We're all discovering that. Like when I was a teenager, I dressed a certain way. I liked wearing, comfortable clothes, jeans. I wasn't comfortable in dresses. So I had, my teenage classmates thought I was a lesbian. So just because I dress this way doesn't make me a lesbian. I just like to dress comfortable. I don't like to dress in dresses. I don't like to do any of that stuff. I consider myself more of a tomboy. No, it doesn't mean I want to be a boy. It just means that I'm more comfortable in these types of clothes, So I think you need to have those discussions with your children. If you have children, discuss those with them or with your grandchildren. You'll buy books on anatomy and how to discuss certain sensitive topics with your kids, that type of thing. But there are some of these books that I don't think they are appropriate for children, and they should not be in a school setting. So they should be restricted from schools. Should they be restricted or banned from public libraries that the city or our tax dollars pay for? No, I don't think they should be banned from the library, And as parents, you should know what your child is borrowing from the library, to make sure it's appropriate for them. So it's not the job of the librarian, especially when it comes to the city librarians. It's not the job of the librarian to keep an eye on your children at the library. It's the responsibility of you as their parent to make sure they are reading appropriate books for their age range. So, because the librarians are not the babysitter. For when it comes to school librarians and school libraries, it absolutely should be appropriate for that age range. Elementary books in the elementary school, middle schooler books in the middle school. Anything that's like YA anything like that, I'd say that's probably perfectly appropriate for a high school setting. Anything like that. Ages 13 to 17 is the range of like, YA. So anyways, I want to discuss that because I hate when people use the term banned. Because there actually have been bannings in the past that actually were whole bans. Like you could not get your hands on these books. So we please need to have that distinction between what's really banned and what's being restricted or censored for when it comes to school-aged children. There is a difference. I am all for making sure books are appropriate for school-aged children compared to a city library or a bookstore, Amazon, anywhere that sells books. It's under the discretion of the bookstore what they want to sell, I know a bookstore that didn't want to sell J.K. Rowling books because they don't like J.K. Rowling's views. That's perfectly acceptable for that bookstore to decide they don't want to sell her books because they have certain feelings about that author. That's perfectly fine. I don't consider that to be banning because you could still purchase the book anywhere else. You just won't purchase the book at that bookstore. So, do I think maybe they're being babies about it? Sure. I could think they're being babies about it. But they own that store. So it's up to them. So, yeah, I think maybe certain books, when it comes to their themes, their settings, the age range, you have to be careful on what you give access to children, And the ones who kind of just throw books in there willy-nilly should not be hired by the schools for the libraries. I actually wouldn't mind being hired as the school librarian because I would make sure that this stuff is appropriate for these children to read, and kind of go from there. But yeah, that's it for this video here. I just wanted to kind of like discuss this because it really irritates me every year when I see it. And I'm like, if you could purchase the book physically at a store, it is not banned. Like I own several books. I could show you. I own several books that I'll probably put it right here. I own several books that are considered quote unquote banned, but it's because they're banned from schools. So I have these books. These books you could still purchase on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble. I very much consider this time frame every year to be more consumerism. Let's buy these books because they're quote unquote banned. No. You want to have people buy these books every year because it keeps the bookstores flowing. It keeps the bookstores going when it comes to purchasing. So I would say for you, if you're an adult, read whatever you want. Whatever you want, read whatever. It's your choice. You should not be restricted on what you can and can't read, So that's it for this one here. Let me know down below. Do you get annoyed with this? Like I said, it's the term for me that I get very annoyed with. And people are like, well, because it's like a buzzword. And it's like, I understand that, but it's like, you still need to be very distinctive of why these books are quote unquote banned. What is the reasoning? Put down the trigger warnings, because then people would understand, like, okay, I understand why this book was banned. Why this book was restricted from school settings. Because it's not appropriate for school-age children. So I very much hate when people kind of like bring up this whole thing of like the government censoring us and blah, 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 and all this. We have other issues besides what they can call book bans. We have other issues we need to worry about when it comes to government control and all this other stuff. If you want to delve down that rabbit hole, there are other issues we need to deal with as adults. The one thing we can do is protect our kids away from inappropriate stuff that they should not be seeing or reading. So yeah, that's it for this video here. Let me know down in the description, or not description, let me know down in the comment section what you think about this. But yeah, that's it for this video. Have yourselves a good day. Take care of yourselves, be kind to each other, and I will see you all on the next video. All right, bye.